So this is the last lecture for Unit 6 on the circulatory system. So I just want to real quickly run through blood vessels. Now we could spend days talking about blood vessels, but unfortunately we don't have days. So I'm just going to go over some of the main points about blood vessels. So first you need to know blood vessels form a closed delivery system, and basically it all begins and ends at the heart. We have three major types of blood vessels: arteries, veins, and capillaries. As your heart contracts, it forces blood into the larger arteries as the blood leaves the ventricles. And then it moves to smaller arteries, and then much smaller arteries known as arterioles, and then eventually into the capillary beds that feed our organs. After the organs take the oxygen that's needed, put the waste back onto the blood cells that needs to go back to the lungs, it then drains into venules, and venules are teeny tiny little veins, and then those venules merge to form smaller veins, and then smaller veins merge to form larger veins that eventually empty back into the heart. All together, our blood vessels form a closed delivery system that stretches about 60,000 miles inside of your body. If we could take out all of your blood vessels and put them end to end, it would wrap around the planet 2.5 times, which is just absolutely remarkable. So here's a picture of some of the major arteries in the body, and some of these we've talked about, like the carotid artery up here. We've talked about the aorta. This one right here, this is an axillary artery. This is a brachial artery that we've discussed. This is the femoral artery, which everyone knows if you get cut on your femoral artery, it's extremely dangerous. And you'll notice that all of these are located in pulse locations. Like you have a pulse in your neck, so you're feeling your carotid pulse. You have a pulse in your wrist, pulse in your groin, pulse behind your knee, and in your foot. And that's because that's where major arteries go. Veins are a little different. Veins are not quite as deep to the body as well. And veins are important. We need veins, but of course they're not carrying oxygenated blood. So let's talk real quickly about the arteries. So arteries are just vessels that transport oxygenated blood away from the heart. And they're divided into three groups based on their size and function. We have elastic arteries, we have muscular arteries, and then we have the little ones known as arterioles. So elastic arteries are basically arteries that have a very elastic tissue, and it allows them to stretch and then go back down, stretch and go back down. So we find these in the aorta and the major branches off of the aorta because they have to be able to take a large volume of blood without splitting. The muscular arteries, their job is to deliver blood to specific body organs or specific body parts, organs. And these are the named arteries that we study in anatomy, like the femoral, the brachial, the carotid. Now, arterioles are the smallest of all of the arteries. So they're teeny, teeny, tiny, and it's where those muscular arteries have branched off into even smaller areas, and they feed the actual tissues. Now, once the blood goes from the heart to the arteries to the arterioles, it lands in the capillary beds. And capillary beds are where we have an exchange. The blood is going to leave behind the oxygen. It's going to leave behind nutrients. It's going to pick up waste, and it's going to pick up carbon dioxide. And so this is where the swap takes place. And so this happens within the bed of tissue that the capillaries are found in, and in that interstitial fluid found around that tissue. Then the blood is going to get into veins. So from the capillary bed, it goes back to the heart by way of veins. So venules are the tiny little veins that are formed when the capillaries begin to unite. So venules are comparable to arterioles. Then the venules are going to merge together to form veins, and then eventually veins merge together to form the really large vein like the superior and inferior vena cava, and then that's what dumps back into the heart. Veins are where we find the majority of our blood supply, about 65%, because that's where most of our blood is deoxygenated blood headed back to the heart. And that's going to wrap it up for this lecture, and this will finish Unit 6. I highly suggest that you go back and re-watch the videos, study through your notes, make sure that you prepare by looking at the worksheets, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.